Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this Thursday afternoon. And really, it's been a little bit of a rough day. I can't even lie. I'm having trouble with YouTube. The Giants still haven't won a game. It's been a while. Technically they did win. They won 2 games, but still, it's been a while since I've seen them win. And yeah, I'm having troubles with YouTube, so that's sort of why some of the videos aren't uploading the way that they are. So forgive me for that. I can't really do anything about that. But one thing that's working, at least, all the other podcasts are working just fine. And so if you guys are interested in tuning into some football or anything else like that, then I highly recommend tuning into those football podcasts that we have going on. It's absolutely great. So we have some great show hosts as well. It's going good. But that's not what you're here. You wanted to talk basketball. You wanted to hear about basketball. So what we're going to do in this first segment is we're going to talk about Sabrina Ionescu. She completely broke the internet with at least all of NBA Twitter was talking about it as well. Kevin Durant tweeted about it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and the amazing ending to that game. And then in the next segments, so the second, third, and fourth, we're going to be looking at ESPN's top 100 list. Obviously, we're not going to get through every single athlete. That would just be ridiculous. But we're going to go through as much as we can. So I'm going to try to get through the 10 in the second segment. And then in the third and the fourth segment, I'll try and cap off some other players as much as I can, and then we'll continue that going on in the future. And then we also have a special fifth segment that I reveal at the end of the fourth segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that if you guys are interested. Before I begin, we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, something you've been dying to share. We are all ears. If you really want your comment or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $sign below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. It really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. And Super Chat's not really your thing, then that's totally fine. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. It's gsmcpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. It really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. So with that out of the way, YouTube Studios is still being annoying to me, so we're just going to completely ignore that. So with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and get into the first segment, which is talking about Sabrina Ionescu. Now, she made this shot. Yeah. She made it from all the way over there, almost at the logo. It was a step back. As you could see, the shot clock was turned off, and there was 0.29 seconds remaining left on the clock. One of the most clutch shots in not just WNBA history, but probably in the history of basketball, period. And the final score was 80-70. Obviously, Sabrina was just, the closer of this game for the Liberty. The most clutch shot in her entire career, the most clutch shot in the Liberty's franchise, and a very exciting way to cap off the game. And it didn't really start out as you guys can see, it was a close game, but it didn't really start out in favor for the Lynx as they were trying to win in hostile environment. As you could see, they are playing in Minnesota's arena, and as you could see, so the first quarter, the scoring went 28 Minnesota, 18 New York. So already Minnesota was firing on all cylinders on offense, and they quickly took a 10-point lead. And then in the second quarter, the New York Liberty ended up outscoring them 17-15. That wasn't really where the comeback started. The comeback started in the second half when they ended up outscoring the Lynx in the third quarter 26-19. Obviously, still wasn't enough. And then they were able to cap it off in the fourth quarter with this incredible shot. Again, this is probably one of the most clutch shots in Sabrina's career, one of the most clutch shots in the Liberty's career, in the entire franchise of the Liberty, and one of the most clutch shots in WNBA history. And what a time to hit this shot, right? I mean, the WNBA, it's been going rather well, like in terms of viewership. Caitlin Clark, you can thank Caitlin Clark for that. And they've been going on a little bit more of an upward trajectory than you would expect in popularity. And it was a very, very good time to hit this shot because, like, a lot of people were watching, a lot of people were tuning in. Kevin Durant ended up tweeting out how Sabrina Ionescu was cold-blooded, and everyone else followed suit and responded. It was a very, very tough shot. It's like it sort of gives me vibes of Damian Lillard and that step back three-pointer that he hit over Paul George, because while it wasn't obviously as far as Damian Lillard's ridiculous shot, it was still a step back, and the defender was relatively in Damian Lillard's face, similar to how Sabrina's defender is a little bit in her face as well. Obviously, I think this is some terrible defense right here. This right here is some awful defense being played in the final quarter of a game, because first of all, her jump is late. At least with Paul George and that shot that Damian Lillard hit, Paul George jumped way before way before he even attempted a shot. So he was already up in his face ready to contest. So like the contest from Paul George was a lot better than this right here. The defender was just absolutely lost. And it's like that's something that kind of defense, you just cannot let that happen in the final minutes of a game. That's just no. Drew Pau Gasol's in the chat. Salute. How you doing? And even with this shot, Sabrina did not really have that good of a game. Taking away this incredibly clutch shot, Sabrina shot 5 for 11 and 2 for 8, then 2 for 7 from 3 with 10 points up until this final shot when she knocked down the dagger. So it's not like she was having a great game in this one, but obviously it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Brenna Stewart actually played phenomenally in this game. She did shoot 9 for 20 and went 2 for 6 from 3, but she ended the game with 30 points and 11 rebounds as well as 4 blocks. So just overall fantastic performance coming in from Brenna Stewart. And like I said, Sabrina, she didn't really play all that well, but she did hit the game-winning shot. And Jonquel Jones ended up scoring 13 points as well. And Leonie Fajbic, forgive me if I messed up that last name, ended up scoring 13 points as well. And, it was really just every starter aside from Bentija Laney Hamilton ended up scoring 13 points. I can't pronounce these players. Good Lord. Bentija, she ended up scoring only 2 points in 35 minutes played. So obviously, just not ideal if you are the Lynx, but not the Lynx, if you are the Liberty. But at the same time, it's like, she didn't really get that many shot attempts. So it's not really all that bad. I mean, she only took 3 shots, but really it was Brenna Stewart who was dominating it for the Liberty. And as for the Lynx, it was much more of an all-around game coming in from the Lynx. I mean, Nafisa Collier was still the leading scorer for the Lynx, ended up scoring 22 points, ended up recording 9 rebounds, and played every single minute of the game. And then Kayla McBride as well played practically every minute of the game. She only sat out for 1 minute, and she scored 19 points, ended with 2 steals, 2 rebounds, and 2 assists. And let's see, Bridget Carleton ended up scoring 14 points and 4 rebounds. And Courtney Williams ended up scoring 12 points, got 8 assists as well as 5 rebounds. And again, it really came down to the wire. It really came down to the final shot. The team that had the last possession ended up winning the game, thankfully, because of that ridiculously clutch shot that the Liberty ended up getting out of Sabrina. I mean, again, it's not how you start, but it's how you finish. And that's the most important thing in any playoff basketball game. Now, the next game is scheduled to start tomorrow at 8 o'clock, which, as I need to remind you guys, is the same time as college football, which, I will continue to say, makes absolutely no sense. Because why? What is the point in making these games exactly at the same time during college football? It really doesn't make any sense. On the bright side, however, it is Oregon going up against Purdue, so maybe not many people are going to be tuning into this game in particular because everyone is going to assume that Oregon is going to absolutely blow Purdue out of the water, the second-ranked team. But still, it's like, why? Why do you even try to compete with football? You're not going to compete with football. I'm a basketball podcast. I love basketball. And even I know that you're not going to compete with football. The NBA tried it and they failed. This is the biggest failure for the WNBA in my opinion. And in my opinion, the biggest reason why they're going to be losing money this season. Because you can't have your most important games going on during other teams and other games that are going on. You just can't at the moment. Like, you cannot compete with this. Not to mention the fact that, baseball is also going to be going on. Actually, wait, no, baseball's not going to... No, yeah, baseball is going to be going on tomorrow. Excuse me, I messed up. Baseball is also going to be going on tomorrow at 8:08. And this is the Liberty against the Yankees. Now, tell me, which team is going to get most attention? I think it's a no-brainer, but that's all I really have to say. So that's all that I have for the first segment, and now we're going to go ahead into ESPN's top 100 players list. We're going to start short, and small, and we're going to start with the top 10 players in the NBA. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. Some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. In this second segment, we are going to be talking about ESPN's top 10 players list and my overall opinions on what I think of the list, whether or not I agree with it, who I think should be on the list, who I think should not be on the list. We're going to talk all about that. Before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, or anything you've been dying to share. We are all ears, and if you really want your comment or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys, and Super Chat's not really your thing, that's totally fine. You could always use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. It both really helps the show. So with that out of the way, we can go ahead and get into ESPN's top 10 players. We're going to dive right into this list. So at 1 and 2, you have Nikola and Luka Doncic. Nikola obviously being at number 1 is a no-brainer, so I have absolutely no problem with that. Luka Doncic being at number 2, however, is something that me personally, I don't really agree with all that much. I think having him at 3 would make a little bit more sense. However, they do have Giannis Antetokounmpo at 3, and I think, Giannis and Luka should flip-flop spots, mainly because Giannis can give the exact same amount of production as Luka Doncic can do, except maybe like 3 less assists, but he can get rebounds, and on top of that, he's also effective on both sides of the ball. I say this every single time when I talk about Giannis. You get both when you have Giannis Antetokounmpo. You get both offense production and you get defensive production. And it's not the same thing with these two players, where you essentially get offensive production from both of them. And it's ridiculous offensive production, don't get me wrong, but I would much rather have a player who can be effective on both ends of the court, like Giannis Antetokounmpo. However, I do understand the logic as to why Luka Doncic is ranked second as opposed to Giannis Antetokounmpo, and mainly the big reason being that we didn't see Giannis Antetokounmpo in the postseason last year. And because we didn't see Giannis Antetokounmpo in the postseason and we saw Luka in the postseason, that's a big reason why Luka Doncic has ended up moving up 2 spots from his previous ranking. Last year he was ranked 4th on ESPN, by the way. And really, I have no problem with that. If that's going to be the logic that ESPN analysts are going to use to determine whether or not the player should make it in this number or a player should make it in that number, I have absolutely no problem with that. I genuinely don't. Because, like, the reality is that, Luka Doncic did play in the postseason. Giannis Antetokounmpo did not play in the postseason. And therefore, Luka Doncic should be recognized for his production in the postseason as well. Now, in the earlier stages of the postseason, Luka didn't really play all that well, but later on he did, so I think that basically evens it out. Next, number 4, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Again, another player who I don't really have a problem with being ranked this high on the list, because SGA, he was phenomenal throughout in the postseason. He did outplay Luka Doncic in that series against the Dallas Mavericks. Unfortunately, he only made it as far as the second round. And you can't really put somebody with a very solid team, despite the fact that he outplayed Luka, over Luka when Luka ended up going farther. That's just how the list is going to work. I don't really see a problem with SGA being ranked at number 4, even though for some reason he was higher in the MVP voting than Luka Doncic. It's a little controversial, yes, I do understand that, but really I have no problem with SGA being on this part of the list. I really don't. The next player I do have a problem with, though, and that is Jason Tatum. He is number 5, and I'm sorry, I understand that he won the championship, but context is very important. He won the championship with the best starting lineup in the entire world of basketball. He had Jaylen Brown, he had Derek White, he had Drew Holiday, he had Kristaps, all playing elite basketball at the same time. Like, there was nothing, it was like too good to fail. It was a system that was way too good to fail. And the fact that Jason Tatum did not win any sort of hardware in this run, in the postseason run, and it was only Jaylen Brown that ended up winning Eastern Conference Finals MVP, Finals MVP. The fact that Jaylen Brown was the best player in both of the most important series, I cannot put this guy over some of the rest of the players that are on this list. It just does not make any sense. He's on a good team. And yeah, sure, he might be the best player on the best team, but there's an argument for him not even being the best player on the best team because of Jaylen Brown. Like, it really does, it was too good to fail, and I really cannot see him being better as the next few players on this list, which are Stephen Curry and yours truly, LeBron James. LeBron is not worse than Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum is not better than LeBron. I'm sorry to say this, he is just not. We saw it in the Olympics, we see it in the regular season, we see it with the team that LeBron has, and like we see it all of the time. No, Jason Tatum is not better than LeBron. He just isn't. He's not. And he's also not better than Steph Curry, who was a phenomenal piece, like in the final few games on the Olympics when Jason Tatum was sitting out in the Olympics. I'm sorry, cannot put somebody who did not win anything and was just a second option for his team. Yes, you heard that right. Second option, because there is no way that he could even be considered a first option because of Jaylen Brown winning the Eastern Conference Finals MVP and the Finals MVP. It just does not make any sense having Jason Tatum over somebody like LeBron. It doesn't. I'm sorry. I don't agree with it. LeBron had the worst team. Jason Tatum had a fantastic team. You switch both of these players around. LeBron is winning Finals MVP. End of story. Like, he does everything better. Aside from rebounding, he does everything better than Jason Tatum. And you can even make the argument that Jason Tatum just gets cherry-pick defensive rebounds. And what that means is essentially, like, teams, they go back on defense, and therefore the board is more or less free. So it's more of a stat padding move than anything else. And I know it sounds like I'm hating, but if you watch it, those rebounds are uncontested. It's really not that difficult to get uncontested rebounds, especially when your teammates let you get those uncontested rebounds. And the fact that he wasn't the best player in the postseason for his team on a fantastic team does not make him over LeBron. It just doesn't. Like, this was exactly the same reason why a lot of people were reluctant to put Curry over LeBron, because Curry did not win any Finals MVPs in any of the matchups that he played against LeBron up until, this certain matchup when he played against Jason Tatum. But still, I know I skimmed over Steph Curry, but I really don't have a problem with Steph Curry being ranked 6, but obviously he should be ranked lower than LeBron. There's just no argument for LeBron being worse than Stephen Curry. No argument for Jason Tatum being better than Stephen Curry. Absolutely none of it. And I think Jason Tatum should be 7th, then 6 should be Steph, and then 5 should be LeBron. End of story. Absolutely no reason why LeBron should be 7th on this list. That is just absolutely appalling to me. And it's really just why? What on earth are you doing? And the next, I don't have a graphic up for these players, unfortunately, because there are a lot. So the next, number 8, is Joel Embiid. And, I obviously, he is a top 10 player. Not going to deny that. However, he did not play the entirety of the season. But at the same time, I can't really think of any other NBA player that should be ranked over him, aside from the players who are already ranked over him. I can't really say somebody like Anthony Edwards is better than Joel Embiid. I can't really say that Kevin Durant is better than Joel Embiid now, at least. But I can say that, LeBron was better than Joel. I can say that Steph was better. I can say that Tatum. I can say that Jokic was clear-cut better than Joel Embiid. Luka, all of those players that were mentioned previously, I can say were better than Joel Embiid confidently. But everyone else can't really say that. And so having him at 8, I think it's a pretty solid spot considering how he didn't play a majority of the regular season, and that should be taken into account when you're talking about a player and how good he is, whether or not he was available for his team. Now, the next player on this list, I alluded to him already before, Kevin Durant. He's ranked 9th. I don't really have a problem with Kevin Durant ranked at 9th. I think that he's still a top 10 caliber player in this NBA, in the lower tiers of being a top 10 player, because he doesn't really seem to be able to get it done in the postseason unless he's playing with a ridiculously stacked team like the Golden State Warriors. That is the biggest bugaboo of Kevin Durant's entire career, and the fact that he tried to form 2 super teams and failed in both of them is not only hilarious, but it also damages, his standings. And I'm sorry to say this, but I don't really see Phoenix going any farther than what they did last season, which was a first-round sweep. Maybe they'll win a game in the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to make it past the first round with the team that they got. But hey, that's just me. And then last, but certainly not least, the most overrated player in the entire NBA right now, and that is Anthony Edwards. He is ranked 10th. And again, in my opinion, he is the most overrated player in the entire NBA right now. A lot of people, they love to compare him to Michael Jordan, which is ridiculous. Even though he's so inefficient, he is he had only one good playoff series, and that was one fantastic playoff series, and that was against Kevin Durant, which was very impressive and very shocking. But in the elimination game against Denver, he was nowhere to be seen. In the playoff series against the Dallas Mavericks, he was also nowhere to be seen. But for some reason, everybody was quick to calling him the next Michael Jordan. And I'm just like, what on earth are we doing here? We're just giving anybody the Michael Jordan handle now, aren't we? But if it's LeBron, oh, LeBron choked. Oh, LeBron did this. Oh, if LeBron played anywhere near as bad as Anthony Edwards did in that postseason, nobody would talk about it. Everybody would slander Anthony Edwards. Everybody would talk so bad about Anthony Edwards and his production and his efficiency. Everything that could have possibly been talked about would have been talked about. In fact, I'm actually going to go ahead and go into his playoff game log just so that way you guys know exactly what I'm saying, because it's really like, it's one of those instances where it gets brushed under the rug, and like, again, it sort of makes, in my opinion, makes him sound incredibly overrated. So let's go ahead, let's run it down. So in the game 7 that I was talking about, Anthony Edwards shot 6 for 24 and 2 for 10 from 3 and ended with 16 points. In an elimination game, if LeBron were to do that in an elimination game, he would get slandered till the end of time. And then in the playoff series against the Mavericks, sure, he did shoot 43% from the field and he did shoot 40% from 3. Right, that is, that's very impressive, I will say that. But in the first 2 games of the entire postseason, of that entire series, he shot 33% from the field and 36% from 3 in 20 points. If LeBron did that, he would get slandered. And I will say, like, I'm not saying that these things and these performances are bad, but they're comparing him to Michael Jordan. So I'm comparing these statistics to Michael Jordan as well. If Michael Jordan put up these kinds of numbers, they would get brushed under the rug. But that's not a Michael Jordan performance in the postseason. You can't do that. That's just like, what are we doing here? It does not make any sense, in my opinion. And he did have he did have dominant performances in games against the Denver Nuggets. I'm not saying that he didn't, but again, like, we're comparing this guy to Michael Jordan. And we really think that Michael Jordan is going to go 6 for 16, 5 for 17. Even the hardcore Jordan fans know that Michael Jordan would never shoot like that. And like really, come on, be realistic here. He is overrated, in my opinion. He's not the next Michael Jordan. It's way too early to even make that accusation. So that's really all that I have to say about Ooh, we got somebody in the chat. Hold on 1 second. Andre, what's up? How's it going? My thing with Ant is, in the big moments, he talks all this talk and tweets all the nonsense, but he doesn't want the ball in the crunch time. Look at the playoffs this year. He ran to the corner, and yeah, he did do that. He did, well, I do understand, like, why he did that. He wanted to get the rest of his team involved, because at the end of the day, one player isn't going to win the game for a team, and I totally understand that you need that team support. But again, like, we're comparing him to Michael Jordan here, and Michael Jordan would have had that mentality, give me the ball, everyone get out the way. And Anthony Edwards not only didn't do that, but he also wasn't able to really produce like Michael Jordan. So those are where my problems stem with Anthony Edwards. But aside from that, that's all that I really have to talk about. So now we're going to continue on with this list, and we're going to go from 11 down to 50, however much we can get done in the time that I have, all right? So I'll be right back after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to continue with ESPN's top players list. Before I do that, however, I'd like to acknowledge Andre in the chat. He says, can't wait to see what my Bucks can do this season. Yeah, good luck with Doc Rivers and Darvin Ham as your coach, buddy. You're going to need it. God, that is like a match made in heaven right there with the coaching. But he also asked, who is your pick for Rookie of the Year? Shepard, easily. Like, no question about it. He was also like one of the favorites to be picked for Rookie of the Year according to ESPN. I think he's easily, the best player in that draft. And this upcoming draft is actually going to be loaded with even more talent. So it could be him. Could also be Zach Edey. I'm a little bit tongue-tied between those two, depending on how well each team is going to perform and how well they do individually. That's going to determine Rookie of the Year. But I think Shepard is really easily the easy pick for Rookie of the Year. But hey, that's just me. So now let me go ahead and pull up this list. Let's see if ESPN wants to load this list. If not, then that is going to be a little bit of a problem. But hey, we'll work our way around it. So hold on just 1 second. Let me just go ahead and open this list. All right, there we go. Scroll all the way down. I do remember who was at number 11, however, and that might shock you who's at number 11, because it definitely shocked me. It was Victor. Yeah, ESPN put Victor Wembanyama as the 11th best player in the NBA. He was ranked 47th in the previous year before he even played a game, and now he jumps up well over 30 spots into the 11th spot. It's really insane, like absolutely insane. And he's a little bit inefficient shooting the ball. I really think he should take a little bit fewer shots than he does and a fewer three-pointers. But again, it's something that he's going to work on as the years go on. And again, last season was a fantastic rookie season from Victor Wembanyama. And this isn't even the best kind of Victor. Like, the rookie season for Victor is arguably going to be his worst year. So I can only imagine how much more he can improve as the years go on. So I don't really have a problem with him being ranked 11th. I'm just a little bit surprised. Because again, it's like he made a huge jump. And I didn't really expect him to be considered at the 11th spot. I genuinely did not. But again, leading the entire league in blocks and leading every single rookie in every single stat aside from assists would tend to do that to you. It would tend to bolster your rating. So I don't really have a problem with this. I genuinely don't. Like, I'm just a little bit shocked, as I said previously. So again, like that's really the biggest shock on this list. So number 12 is Jalen Brunson. Again, absolutely no problems with this. Jalen Brunson had a phenomenal run, not only in the postseason, but as well as in the regular season. The Knicks are finally a respectable team now, and they all have Jalen Brunson and the Villanova boys to thank for it. And it's really like, I'm very excited to see what the Knicks could do this season. And I expect the Knicks to finish second in the standings at the very least. Would not be surprised if they end up falling a little bit short to like maybe fourth, because the Eastern Conference is incredibly top-heavy now. And while the Western Conference is more or less up for grabs, the Eastern Conference is rather top-heavy. And it's like, the top 6 teams are going to make the playoffs once again. And the play-in teams probably don't really matter all that much, and the spots are going to be saved for either the Miami Heat or some other top-heavy team in the Eastern Conference. It's really like, because the teams that I know that are going to make the postseason for the Eastern Conference, it's Boston, it's New York, it's Milwaukee, it's, the teams are leaving my head now. Orlando Magic, the Cavs, the Pacers, and whichever team that ends up winning in the play-in, which could be the 76ers, could also be the Miami Heat. It's like, it is really, really top-heavy, and it's going to come down to the teams that are in 1 through 8, whereas opposed to the Western Conference, it could come down to basically any team can end up making the postseason. Like, it's really, really tough in the Western Conference to decide which team is going to end up prevailing. But in the Eastern Conference, it's much easier. So that's really, like, no surprises to me there. Next, at number 13, is Anthony Davis. And, again, not a big problem I have. Not a real problem that I have with Anthony Davis being number 13th on this list. He did play a lot of games in this season. He didn't get injured, which was a good thing. He also averaged 2.3 blocks this season, along with a personal best 12.6 rebounds per game, along with 24 points per game. And, like, again, playing 76 games, which was a career high for him, it's, you know, being ranked at number 13, in hindsight, isn't really all that bad. But when I think of Anthony Davis, I just think of him as being an incredibly maddeningly frustrating player. Like, he's very, very frustrating. And the reality is that Anthony Davis should be in the top, he should be in a top 3 best player right now. Like, he should be in that conversation. But instead, he's in the lower part of the top 10, and he should be the best big man in the league right now. But instead, he has to settle for being in, like, top 5 or top 4 instead of, like, something like top 2 or top 3, which is a little bit disappointing considering how great he was in New Orleans, and how ridiculous he was in college as well. But being ranked at number 13th isn't the end of the world, obviously, but it could have been a little bit better, in my opinion. Like, and this isn't a problem with the rankings. This is just a problem with Anthony Davis, in my opinion. Next player at number 14, Jaylen Brown. Maybe should be a little bit higher. I wouldn't mind if maybe Jaylen Brown and Jalen Brunson actually switched spots, considering how Jaylen Brown actually ended up winning Finals MVP and Eastern Conference Finals MVP. I have no problem with Jaylen Brown being higher than Jalen Brunson. However, I will say that Jaylen Brown did have the much better team and easily had the much better second option with Jason Tatum, as opposed to Jalen Brunson, whose second option was Julius Randle. So it's like, I don't really have a problem with him being ranked at 14th, but at the same time, I wouldn't have a problem with him being a little bit higher on the list. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Would you guys rather have Jaylen Brown or would you rather have Jalen Brunson? Like, let me know. Because one thing that should be noted is that, you know, Jaylen Brunson, he's fantastic on offense, but Brown's got that defense. Like, again, you have to have both sides of the ball, in my opinion, if you want to be considered one of the top players. Like, because that is effectively half the game. It's played on the other side of the court. I mean, most of the time, you know, good teams are going to play it a little bit less than half because they spend a little bit more time on offense, but half the game is played on the other side of the court. And Jaylen Brown is fantastic on defense. Meanwhile, Jalen Brunson is a little bit of a liability on defense. So, you know, it's really dependent on which one you would rather have. Andre easily would pick Brunson. Again, I have no problem with that, but, you know, just something to think about. Next is Devin Booker at number 15. I personally think Devin Booker is a better shooting guard than Anthony Edwards. And one of the things that separates Anthony Edwards from Devin Booker is the effort that Anthony Edwards puts on defense. And like Anthony Edwards puts a lot more effort on defense than Devin Booker. However, Devin Booker is, in my opinion, a much better scorer than Anthony Edwards, and a much more consistent scorer as well than Anthony Edwards. And not only that, Devin Booker has the scoring performances to back that up as well. Obviously, losing to Anthony Edwards is not a very good thing to have on your resume, and that's probably one of the biggest reasons why Anthony Edwards is ranked higher than Devin Booker, because he ended up sweeping Devin Booker in the postseason. But again, I just think that Devin Booker is a better shooting guard and a much better, like, overall. And actually, I'm pretty sure he actually played point guard for the Suns in this season, which adds another layer to Devin Booker and his excellence. The fact that he was able to play guard and still end up averaging a solid amount of assists. I don't remember exactly what assist numbers he averaged. In fact, actually, let me go ahead and check right now before I make that point. Hold on just 1 second. And he averaged almost 7 assists in this season, which is a career high for him in terms of the assist category, while still being a 27 point per game scorer. So really, and Andre agrees in the chat. I just noticed that chat. But yeah, I just think that Devin Booker is a better shooting guard than Anthony Edwards, and a better guard than Anthony Edwards. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. Next, at number 16, the second most overrated player, Tyrese Haliburton. I'm sorry, I do not like Haliburton. I am not a fan of Haliburton in his game. I think that the Pacers, while they're a fantastic team and they're a great team to watch, I feel like Haliburton gets a little bit too much credit. A lot of people, they want to consider him like the best true point guard and like the only true point guard that this NBA has. But what does that really mean? Like, what does true point guard mean? Like, especially now in this NBA. And Trae Young is better than Tyrese Haliburton. I'm sorry to say this, but I genuinely feel like Trae Young, and you guys know, like, you know, if you guys paid attention to my podcast, like, I really like New York, and I like New York teams, and me saying that Trae Young is better than Haliburton is, like, would be a death sentence for a lot of the time. But, again, Trae Young, he's been more consistent, and he's held his averages for longer than Tyrese Haliburton. I understand that, you know, Haliburton had the much better team success, but you also have to remember that Haliburton also had the much better team around him. And I just feel like Trae Young, his consistency and his overall production is something that gets pushed under the rug a little bit. And really, I think that Trae Young is a better point guard than Haliburton. That's my opinion. So we're running low on time, so I'm going to go ahead and go into this break. But we're going to continue on with this list, and we'll start from 17. We left off at 16 with Haliburton. So I'll be right back after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be talking about continuing with the ESPN's top players list. And Andre does have something to say in the chat once again. I'm taking a fully healthy De'Aaron Fox over Haliburton. And I agree with you. I think De'Aaron Fox is one of the most underrated players in the entire NBA last season, along with Sabonis. And I do understand that, you know, the Kings, they haven't really had much playoff success, and that's really a big reason why Haliburton is so high on the list. But still, when we're talking about pound for pound, player for player, I would take De'Aaron Fox as well over Haliburton. But that's just me. And I'd also take Trae Young over Haliburton. But again, that's also just me. Next, at number 17 on this ESPN list is Donovan Mitchell, which I feel like is a little bit low, but at the same time, I do understand why Donovan Mitchell is so low on this list. He was injured in the postseason. We were unable to see him really, we did see him play in the postseason, but in that later series where he ended up getting injured, that was, it was unfortunate for him, but, that's sort of what happens in some of these postseasons. And the fact that we didn't get to see him go up against the Boston Celtics is something that I really wish that we saw. And I can't really say that I have that much of a problem with him being ranked at number 17. Is he better than Anthony Edwards? Probably. I just don't think we have enough proof for that. Because Anthony Edwards has already made it farther into the postseason than Donovan Mitchell has in recent memory. Now, is it Donovan Mitchell's fault? Not necessarily. But, making it farther in the postseason is definitely going to give you a boost in your rating. So can't really say that I have that much of a problem with it, but at the same time, I think it's a little bit, it's like, I don't know, it's a bit of a controversy, I don't know, But next on this list, Bam Adebayo. He's ranked at number 18th. And again, not entirely sure because, I mean, Jimmy Butler is the best player on the team. And all of a sudden, Bam Adebayo is ranked higher than Jimmy Butler. So, again, I don't really know. Don't really know if I agree with this. And I do understand, his defensive value, the fact that he's versatile on the defensive end. And his offense is, pretty solid. And he did also hold his opponents to 48% effective field goal percentage. But yeah, I don't really, it's really just, I don't know. Brandon Katz in the chat. Halliburton is already better than Trae Young, and he's still getting better. Halliburton is a much more efficient scorer. Did you not see his stretch after the in-season tournament? He was absolutely abysmal after the in-season tournament. Like, you can argue that Trae Young isn't efficient, but you can't really make the argument that Halliburton is any more efficient. And it's like, I understand that the style of play that the Pacers play also sort of encourages Halliburton to get a lot of assists the way that he also throws the ball down the court. Not saying that it's a bad thing, but I will say that I don't think that Halliburton is already better than Trae Young. Just because Halliburton did it for one season, meanwhile Trae Young has been top 5 in assists in almost every single season. Did you not see Young's whole career? Of course I've seen Trae Young's whole career. He made it to the Eastern Conference Finals the same that Tyrese Halliburton made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Not to mention, he's been top 5 in assists per game and total assists for the majority of his career. Not to mention, he always tends to score around 26, 27 points per game throughout his career. So I don't really see a problem with that. Halliburton has shot 40% from 3 over the last 4 years. Yes, that is true. His production over the last 4 years wasn't nearly as much as Trae Young's. His usage rate also wasn't nearly as much as Trae Young's. So it makes sense why he's a little bit more efficient, because he tends to get a lot of better looks. He played for the Kings a couple of years ago. And again, it's really like, he wasn't a huge option for the Kings. He just turned into a huge option for the Pacers. And Atlanta hasn't even made the playoffs in the last 2 years. That is understandable, but again, is it Trae Young's fault? Can't really say that it is. The Pacers overall are just a much better team than the Atlanta Hawks have been. I mean, you look at the talent, you look at Pascal Siakam and how he's been playing. I don't really think it's fair to make that suggestion. Not to mention the amount of coaching changes that Atlanta has gone through and all the other problems that Atlanta have. It's like, it's not Trae Young. It's genuinely not Trae Young. That's the problem. I genuinely don't think that. And I think that while Trae Young is, yes, he's rather inefficient from time to time, he's been consistent throughout all of his career. And yeah, but Halliburton isn't much better of a defender either. So I don't really see any argument with that. You don't get Halliburton on your team because you're looking for a defender. You get Halliburton on your team because you're looking for a player that can pass the ball rather well and a player that can score the ball rather well. There were times where Halliburton was rather quiet, even in the postseason, and at some points during the regular season. There was a point where he completely fell off in the regular season. And I can't really say, yes, sure, Trae Young is an ISO-heavy scorer. I totally understand that. But that's the offensive system, and that's how it was ran. I don't know if you can really blame that on Trae Young for running the system the way that they wanted the system to be ran. Not to mention the fact that it actually ended up working one year when they played the Bucks. They ended up losing to the Bucks because Giannis is just Giannis. But still, it's really, I don't really think it's all that. But let's continue on with this list. Tyrese Maxey, he was ranked at number 19. I don't really have a problem with Tyrese Maxey being ranked at 19. I think his playoff performance against the Knicks was more than enough to give him this ranking, not to mention his overall consistently during the entirety of the regular season, especially when Joel Embiid ended up getting injured. Brandon had one more thing to say. Atlanta only made the conference finals because Ben Simmons couldn't shoot free throws. That run was a fluke. Sure, I mean, you can say that if you want, but I mean, sure, he only made it because of that, but whose fault is that? It's clearly not Atlanta's fault that Ben Simmons couldn't shoot. It wasn't, not to mention the fact that Philly had a lead in the series, but they ended up blowing it. It's not his fault. It's genuinely not his fault. And Giannis didn't even play in 2 games in the conference finals. Yeah, and they ended up winning one of those games. So I don't really see what the problem is there. Like, it wasn't a fluky run. They were clearly a solid team. They were clearly a well-coached team. Later on, when they ended up adding DeJounte and they ended up trying that, of course it didn't work, but the Pacers overall had a much better team. Like, they just needed that one guard, that one efficient guard that can put them over the hump. I am so confident that if you switch spots with Trae Young and Tyrese Halliburton, they'd both do the exact same thing. I genuinely don't think that Atlanta would have seen any drastic difference with Halliburton at their point guard. At number 20 is Ja Morant. I don't really agree with Ja Morant being this high on the list because he did not play majority of the last season. So the fact that Ja Morant is ranked 20 on this list is a little bit of a problem that I got because, like, why is he ranked so high? Genuinely does not make any sense to me. Like, he was ranked 35th last year, and in that last year he actually played. And now he moves up 15 spots higher when he doesn't play. That does not make any sense. Genuinely does not make any sense to me. Not to mention him being over Paul George. I don't think he's better than Paul George. And, given the fact that Paul George actually played last season. And he's ranked 21. Again, I don't really see that. I don't agree with that. But I'm sure all of you guys have different opinions in the comments. And then directly behind him is Kawhi Leonard. And I don't really think that Paul George is better than Kawhi Leonard either. Like, this, obviously, the ESPN, they tend to do this where it's like they tend to put certain players in certain spots to spark controversy and this, that, and the other. And I don't really think Kawhi Leonard should be ranked under Paul George. I feel like you should flip those 2 spots. And I also don't think that Ja Morant should be above either of those 2 players. And then at number 23, we have Damian Lillard, which again is another surprising player to be ranked so high on this list. I don't think Damian Lillard really played all that well to be considered or even be ranked number 23. He did move down a few spots from his previous ranking, which was ranked 14, but having him over somebody like Paolo Banchero, who's ranked at number 24, doesn't make any sense. Paolo Banchero is, again, another player who I think is criminally underrated. And the fact that Paolo Banchero is ranked at number 24 just does not sit well with me. I actually think that there's an argument for Paolo being a little bit better than Paul George. I think that there's a little bit of an argument in there. And he's also clearly better than Ja Morant, considering how he actually played in the previous season. So, considering Ja Morant didn't play in the previous season. So, being at number 24 for Paolo it's pretty solid. But again, I think it's a little bit low. But that's usually my opinion. So, we're going to stop there just because we are running super low on time. And now we're going to go into another break and then go into our final segment, which is a preseason recap. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned. And we are back with the 5th segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this 5th segment, we are going to speed run through all of these preseason games that ended up happening yesterday because I have a very important meeting that I have to get with a teacher and I can't really miss that meeting. So I'm going to try to speed run this as best as I can while still going over the usual things that I go over when I do these preseason recaps. So 76ers, they ended up destroying the Brooklyn Nets 117-95. The best player for the 76ers was Kelly Oubre Jr. He ended up scoring 18 points in 21 minutes. And it was a pretty solid production overall from the team. They ended up shooting 46% from the field compared to the Nets, who ended up shooting 39% from the field. The Nets and their best player was Cam Thomas, surprise, surprise. Ended up scoring 17 points, 2 assists, and 1 rebound. So, not really all that high on the Brooklyn Nets and the expectations for them in this season, but the 76ers, especially being lucky that Paul George only has a bone bruise, again, it's very lucky. So their season it's not really up for grabs as much as I thought it was, but it's still, they're on the right track. There's nothing to really worry about. Next is the Detroit Pistons. Now the Pistons, they ended up winning 108-92 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Their entire starting lineup played terribly, but again, their entire starting lineup only played for 8 minutes. So, which is great in my opinion. I think this is exactly how you should be playing your starting lineup. And the leading scorer was Simone Fontecchio. Forgive me if I messed up that last name. He ended up scoring 18 points for the Pistons. And for the Cavs, Jarrett Allen ended up being the best scorer for the team. Ended up scoring 19 points and recording 8 rebounds. Donovan Mitchell ended up scoring 13 points as well. And just, solid production coming in from the starting lineup. Again, just solid. I mean, the Pistons, they shot the lights out from 3 compared to the Cavs. The Cavs went 9 for 30 for 30%. And the Pistons ended up going 16 for 35 for 45%. And when a team is shooting 45% from 3 on more 3-point attempts than you are, and they're shooting better, obviously you're going to lose. It's just that simple. Like, there's no way to win when a team is shooting like that and you're shooting like that. It's really just like, no, not happening. The Atlanta Hawks, they ended up losing another game. They lost to the Miami Heat 120-111. Jimmy Butler ended up scoring 24 points in 21 minutes. Tyler Hero scored 19 points in 23 minutes. And player coming off the bench, Haywood Highsmith, ended up scoring 16 points in 17 minutes. And overall, again, solid production coming in from the Heat. They shot 51% from the field compared to the Atlanta Hawks shooting 42% from the field. And let's see, the best player and the best scorer for the Hawks was Jalen Johnson, 21 points in 17 minutes. Trae Young ended the game with 10 points and 7 assists. So overall, solid performance coming in from the team. Not to mention David Roddy coming in with 15 points in 33 minutes. And Kobe Buffkin, who also had 15 points, but in 24 minutes. Now, Roddy, he ended up going 5 for 15 from the field, so he scored 15 points on 15 shots, which is really not efficient, not something that you really want to do. And Trae Young ended up hitting all of his 3-pointers, 2 for 2, 3 for 5 from the field. And he didn't really play that much, which I don't really expect. You should not be playing Trae Young all that much. But yeah, that's basically the final score for that game. Next, the Chicago Bulls, they ended up playing against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they actually ended up beating the Timberwolves. And even better news, this was Lonzo Ball's return. Yes, Lonzo Ball ended up returning after not playing almost 2 years, I believe it was. But yes, this is the big return for Lonzo Ball. He ended up scoring 10 points. He did hit a 3-pointer as his first shot attempt, I believe. And was overall, he shot 4 for 6 from the field, very efficient, 2 for 4 from 3, very efficient as well. Recorded 10 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist, 1 steal, and 1 block. Overall, just a fantastic performance in a return game coming in for Lonzo. I'm a huge Lonzo fan, by the way. Kobe White ended up scoring 23 points, was the leading scorer for the entirety of the Bulls. Zach LaVine scored 19 points. Nikola Vucevic ended with 17 points and 12 rebounds. And let's see, Talen Horton-Tucker ended the game with 17 points as well. The Timberwolves, on the other hand, Anthony Edwards, the amazing, overrated Anthony Edwards, shot 6 for 23 from the field and 3 for 16 from 3. Just bad shooting in a preseason game. DiVincenzo shot 17 points, 3 for 13 from 3. Again, just bad. And let's see, Josh Minott ended up going 7 for 10 from the field with 18 points, 3 for 4 from 3. but the whole team as a whole ended up shooting 32% from three. It was really Anthony Edwards and DiVincenzo that were holding this team back. And, I mean, the Timberwolves, they had 103 shot attempts compared to the Bulls and their 91 shot attempts. The Bulls just ended up hitting more shots at a much more efficient rate than the Timberwolves, and that was a big reason why they ended up winning. Also, Anthony Edwards, 6 for 23. I cannot stress that enough. Overrated. Just an overrated player. Julius Randle ended up going 6 for 12 with 15 points. Even he ended up playing better than Anthony Edwards. But that's really all that I had to say about this game. I mean, that was just pitiful performance. Rudy Gobert ended up getting 13 points and 17 rebounds on 5 for 8 shooting. Obviously, you expect efficient shooting coming from Rudy Gobert. He only takes dunks and layups, so yeah. And then the Trailblazers, they ended up beating the team that I still have no idea how to pronounce, Ulam Ratio Farm. Forgive me if I messed up that name. They ended up winning 111 to 110. The fact that this game was even close is a little bit concerning. And it's really just like, I don't know. Why was this game so close? Alicia Conliffe, overrated, you say? Yep, Anthony Edwards is overrated. People consider him, I talked about this before in the previous segments, people consider him Michael Jordan of today's NBA. Like, they compare him to Michael Jordan. That is incredibly overrated given what he was doing in the postseason. I'm sorry, but it's like he is one of the most overrated players in the entire NBA, in my opinion. And, I mean, we'll see what happens this year, and we'll see exactly how he'll play in the postseason. But again, being compared to Michael Jordan after just one postseason sweep, that's overrated. I'm sorry, but that is just overrated. That is overrated. Next, we're talking about the Portland Trailblazers. So Scoot Henderson ended up scoring 23 points in this game in 32 minutes, and Toumani Camara ended up scoring 15 points and recording 10 rebounds as well. And Denny Avdija ended up scoring 18 points for the Portland Trailblazers. Again, solid performance from the Blazers, at least from the field. They shot 5 for 24 from 3, and that's 20%. The fact that they're only taking 24 three-pointers is not only concerning, but the fact that they're only making, like, 5 of them, that's also really concerning. Because it's like, what on earth is going on? Like, that is just terrible, terrible efficiency. But I digress. I don't really think the Portland Trailblazers are going to be much of a threat to any team this season, and this game kind of supports that theory. But that's all that I really have to say about the preseason and its recap, and that's it for the show. I have to go to a meeting, you guys, so I apologize for ending this off a little bit more earlier than I normally would, but thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As usual, please remember to use the Super Chat. It really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. You just click on the $sign below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. If Super Chat's not really your thing, then that's totally fine. You could always use the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment, gsmcpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. That's all that I really have to say on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're probably going to continue with ESPN's Top 100 list tomorrow, so if you guys are interested in that, be sure to tune in again at 12:30, where I start with that. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.